So the first victim of the shooting in Las Vegas has filed a lawsuit against MGM and the organizers. This is the first victim to launch a lawsuit against the organizers of the event. There have been other lawsuits so far, but this is the first one by a victim against the organizers. Her name's Paige Gasper. She's a 21-year-old student of Sonoma State University. She has named defendants in the case, such as MGM Resorts, Mandalay Corporation. MGM runs Mandalay Bay, and that was the place where the shooting took place. From other defendants are Live Nation Entertainment, who hosted the Route 91 Festival, also names the estate of the shooter, Stephen Paddock, and names Slide Fire, the company that makes bump stocks, which is the accessory that was attached to the guns that made them go from shooting semi-automatically to behaving like automatic weapons, which is responsible for the rapid fire that you heard and caused so much damage. She and her legal team are pointing out that it shouldn't be okay and shouldn't be possible for someone to smuggle 23 guns, AR, assault rifles into a room without anybody noticing. They're pointing out the hotel's failure to respond in a timely manner to Paddock's shooting of a hotel security guard, which now it seems like he was shot 6 minutes before the main shooting happened, as opposed to the previous narrative that said it was the fact that the security guard showed up and got shot that Paddock felt like it was over and stopped shooting. So that's in question. Things like there were 6 minutes then of nothing happening, according to the lawsuit. They want to point out that this lawsuit's not about gun control. But what do you guys think about this lawsuit? Do you think this is the only one, or will there be more coming? Do you think this is the right way to go about affecting change? It's a big,
yeah, that's a big wow. Hold on, can we come back after a break and answer that? Just kidding. No, I think she's right for enacting this lawsuit. I think that, I was just in Vegas, and you can walk into any hotel, no one cares. People are there's really no security anywhere. And if the Paddock guy had all that ammunition, all those firearms in his room, and no one was aware of it, yeah, MGM should be held accountable.
How do we solve this?
Solve what?
How do we make something like this not happen? Let's start with the hotel. Like, how does the hotel fix this problem? Because that's what this is all about, right?
Well, Vegas, so how do airlines fix this problem? You walk through metal detectors, you get wanded, they have security.
That's kind of the fun thing about Vegas, though, is that you can just kind of like wander and like go into different hotels and casinos. And,
sure.
But I think that would take away from, unfortunately, it would take a lot away from Vegas, but at the same time, it's like, you want to protect the people that are there. So
it's all fun and games until someone gets hurt.
Exactly.
Another fun thing about Vegas is not getting shot.
Yeah, generally but that doesn't happen there.
A lot of people are pointing out, like, you want metal detectors at every hotel.
Yeah.
Is that the solution? Let's fix it.
Look, I err on the side of go hard or go home, and I think that it's like with 9/11. Now, after something that horrific and that tragic happens, you take the proper precautions so it doesn't happen again. We all have to sacrifice. Yes, I'm sorry to talk about TSA, but that's the only thing I could think of when it comes to a horrific event that will require those kind of accommodations to be made. Fine, yeah, Vegas is a place where you can go in and stay out all night and be at a hotel and do whatever, but if it means saving lives and making sure that we're all safe, yes, beef up security, hire more security that's trained.
But hire all the security that you want. As long as firearms are so easily accessible in the United States, we're going to have tragedies like this again, as we've seen. Year after year. It was just over a year after Orlando, Las Vegas happened. So I was thinking about TSA as well, because I remember when we moved to Belgium, it was way before 9/11, and I remember my family just rolled up with everything onto the plane, including a cat, and just no paperwork or anything, just nothing. She could have been
a feral cat.
And she was a wild cat. Her name was Mishkin.
She was feral.
So she was,
she was a liger.
Yeah, she was not a good. She's not clean. I don't know what she released in Belgium, but probably something in that cat population. But what I'm saying is, and then you saw, following 9/11, they beefed up security, and that is one thing. But 9/11 was such a different terrorist event than what we saw in Las Vegas, even though that was also a terrorist event. When it comes to firearms in the United States, until we have comprehensive regulation, I don't care what.
Exactly.
I mean, if it's not a movie theater, if it's not a nightclub, if it's not a hotel, a school, it's gonna be somewhere else.
But that's a big, and you're right. But what you're saying, Grace, those are great points, and I agree with you 100% on that. But gun control and those type of legislation is like a bigger undertaking than an immediate response or an immediate accommodation or enhancement to hotels in Vegas. Because the question was, how do we stop this? Yes. Fundamentally, on a grander scale, absolutely. Let's get gun control together. But if Brett, your question was, how do we stop people coming into hotels, bringing firearms and things like that?
Well, just how do we stop this from happening? One thing is like, let's make it so you can't break the window with a hammer. You know, because it's not like there's a fire escape out the side of that. Why is it such an easily breakable window?
Or another thing that they cite is you should have room service or room checks, not room service, but what do they call it, maid service or something? At least, let's say every 48 hours, and that is a requirement because they say hold up in the
every day,
right? But unless you have the little things.
Yeah, you can put on do not disturb. But if someone has that hanging on their door for he was in there for 4 days without any sort of room check, that's highly suspicious. And I mean, I guess if you really do want to get into the details of how could this not happening, and then let's make stronger windows and let's make sure that there are regular room checks for long-term visitors. But it's gonna happen again if we're just gonna sort of pussyfoot around and not make any sort of change to our firearm regulation.
Right. So he had no past. Really, to speak of.
Literally.
No past.
He had a past.
His past was like he worked for the government for a while.
It was like the most boring, the most unassuming person. Like if you read that, you'd be like this guy's boring as hell.
But he had nothing that would necessarily tick off check marks of interest on a federal. There's a federal background check you have to go through if you buy a gun like this. There's problems with the federal background check. Federal background check, they run it immediately. Unless you buy something at a gun show, there's loopholes, whatever. That's one loophole we need to close. The other one is, if they run the background check, usually it takes like a minute or two or a day. If it takes more than 3 days to do the background check, for whatever reason, they're just like, take it. That's how Dylan Roof got that gun. It's because the background check kind of was like, sorry we made you wait 3 whole days.
Oh my God.
Rather than fix the problem that makes it take that long or just make you wait until we actually do the check. Take it, 3 days. Sorry, my bad. That's it. So that's one thing. I don't know. They talk in the suit about how people were trampled. So there's crowd control to get people out. There's a lawsuit against the company that does bump stocks, right? And other people are involved in a different lawsuit in addition to this one, which names the bump stock. The bump stock went through the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms check. They sent one to the ATF. ATF got it, tried it. There's a letter where the ATF goes, yeah, we used it, it's compliant with the law, so how do we send? They literally at the end go like, so give us instructions on how to send this back to you. That's what happened.
Wow.
So the ATF needs to change its policy because the spirit of, they said there's no internal pieces that are moving to make it fire automatically. That's what the law says. There need to be internal pieces that make it fire automatically. This is an external piece that allows it to fire quickly, but not our definition of automatically. So what happened was the letter of the law was outside of the spirit of the law, and the ATF was like, we're just interested in making sure that this follows like what the law says and not what it means.
Wow.
So that's something that we need to take into consideration. The ATF is talking about it, and the NRA is fine with regulating those things. So things need to be done.
Do you think that a lawsuit like this will be productive in furthering conversations and furthering protections like the ones you just outlined?
Lawsuits like this change the behavior of corporations.
Yes.
So the reason that it says, and that they're weird, the reason it says hot on your coffee at McDonald's is because of a tort by someone who sued because they got burned. And so that will change behavior, and that will change, and large events will. MGM owns a bunch of Vegas casinos. They own the MGM Grand, the Bellagio, they own the Delano, the Mandalay Bay, a whole crap ton of them, all down the strip. And there's only a handful of companies that do that, like Wynn and a couple others, and Caesars. And so they all need to start working together to figure something out. They will weigh the amount they are forced to pay in damages, and they've already given $3 million to victims, just as aid to victims of the shooting and first responder organization. They will weigh the amount they're forced to pay against the amount it costs to make changes, and they will go with the thing that costs less, typically.
Yeah.
Now, another factor in their calculation on what costs less or more is your opinion and whether you will send your money toward them or not, if you think it's enough. So that's the only other factor at work in here. So stay vigilant and make sure that you make a difference.